Welcome everyone to this next Grip workshop. Today, we're featuring Torq, and actually with us is Ryan Darce, the Chief King and Security Architect of all things hyperautomation and excellence from Torq. At least that's what I think you should be, Ryan. Oh my goodness, the magic you're able to work, and we're going to show some of that today.
Absolutely.
So looking forward to that. And of course, with me as always, Asaf Shoshani, our Deputy CTO here at Grip. And good to see you again, Asaf.
See you, Josh.
I'm glad we were able to connect before it's completely sundown there. So I appreciate you staying up with us and getting into this workshop. Today, folks, we're going to talk a lot about how we secure identity and SaaS risk and do so with a lot of automation and how the integration between Grip and Torq can actually function. So we'll do a use case where we just map out and kind of diagram the flows and the business reasons for those things. And then we're also going to jump in and actually build one with you. So you'll be able to see the actual entrails of what goes on with these workflows and how to segment and portion out all the various aspects from Grip that you want to automate and action in the real world via Torq. And so with that, we're going to go real quickly so we can get into the exercises. And I'm just going to give a little bit of introduction to some of the things that you're sitting with here today. So very quick overview of Grip, and also in with our integrations and that better together concept that we get with Torq. When it comes to Grip, I'll give you 3 C's to remember: continuous, contextual, and consistent. So on the continuous side, we're always looking for SaaS and identity relationships. Identities are assets, not people. And those identities get into sometimes dangerous and risky relationships when they're spread about online. They also accumulate a lot of risk whenever those identities go into relationships that we know nothing about and then just sort of sit there forever. And so being able to look back in time, look forward into the future and new SaaS risk, as well as understanding where identities are in the present moment, is really what we hang our hat on. That's that continuity, that continuousness. The second is the context. Being able to understand the actual relationships that things are happening, not just is it allowed, is it not, is it in policy, is it not, what's really being used and abused sometimes when it comes to identities and where they get into perilous relationships. And that's the second aspect of Grip. And then thirdly, is being able to enforce things in a more decentralized way. Oftentimes we have decentralized enforcement and decentralized management when it comes to identities and credentials. That's why 85% are not inside of SSO, not behind SAML, not behind MFA. And there's a reason for that. We give a lot of permission to users to take that identity asset into new relationships to get their job done. But in so doing, we also lead to a lot of identity sprawl and SaaS sprawl. And oftentimes it's difficult to get a handle over all of it, but that's why companies and organizations rely on Grip, because they're able to discover everything, prioritize what actually matters, secure things on demand in the moment when that identity is using that web service, initiating that ability to have strong credentials and identity protection. And then finally, and the big part of today, is orchestrate everywhere. So what we're going to talk about a lot today is going to be that orchestration aspect. And many times we pair that up with some great capabilities from Torq. And Ryan, I know you're probably just itching to talk about some of these things that Torq brings to the table.
Of course. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Torq, let me just kind of do a brief introduction. Torq's enterprise-grade security hyper-automation platform unifies and automates the entire security infrastructure, and this delivers an unparalleled protection and productivity. Torq drives maximum value and efficiency from existing security investments, supercharges security teams with powerful, easy-to-use, no-code, low-code, and full-code workflows that reduces manual tasks. This frees security professionals to focus on higher value strategic activities. Now, Torq integrates with anything and automates everything. And we mean that by connecting to everything as well. This means every app, every stack. It's vendor agnostic across the cloud, on-premise, and in hybrid environments. This includes connecting to Microsoft Teams, Slack, Discord, and Zoom for collaboration as well. We also allow you to bring your own code. This is very useful to many of our customers. We can go beyond just straight HTTP APIs. We support any CLI on any platform and any programming or scripting language. And this includes Python, PowerShell, Bash, and JavaScript. We also allow you to bring your own container, where Torq orchestrates containerized actions that can connect to internal and external platforms seamlessly. And very, very quickly, some background on Torq. We have nearly 200 different technology partnerships, and this is growing weekly. And we were founded in 2020 with offices in the United States, Israel, United Kingdom, and Spain. And we're very proud to say that we have over 2 million security automations that occur per day for our customers. And again, this grows on a daily basis the more and more customers use our platform. All right, Josh.
That's really helpful. So again, when it comes to orchestrating everywhere and discovering everything, you can see how these things work together, folks, when it comes to all of those insights and everything that's driven from grip, and then being able to trigger on that to accomplish your real world goal. And in the real world for the digital enterprise is digital happenings. We need digital assets to talk to one another. We need digital assets to go beep. And one of the great things about Torq is that ability to take an insight and make things go beep. And so I put both of you to the task, of course. Thank you so much for calling or responding to the calling to this mission. But we wanted to look at a couple of different use cases. We wanted to look at something we could very quickly see as a common thing that happens, but it's more of responsive, right? So we need to offboard a user or a group of users because they've changed roles in the organization, or they've left the organization, or we need to offboard that because there's a rogue something that's happening, or a compromised SaaS service. Let's offboard all of our users to that. So it's more of in this responsiveness. And then the second one we're going to go through today, folks. The second one is about those regular, routine, hygienic kinds of user access reviews, justification. Is this authorized use when it comes to coordinating all these different business teams? Because let's face it, they're managing their own apps at this point, but they're doing so with these identity assets, which are corporate assets. Again, identities are assets, not people. But those assets are used in a far range of different contexts. And so the justification has to also flex and flow. And so we're going to go through some of that with you as well. But with that, I did want to just pause and shift gears and hand things off as we do talk about the user offboarding. I mentioned that one of those things is that it's in response to some real world event. Someone's changed roles, someone's changed jobs, someone's left the organization, or there's a compromise and I want to act upon it. Or I go through a grip discovery and I do a identity risk assessment and I discover, I have 115 different apps that still have dangling access from years ago. And I want to do something about it. I want to do some offboarding, but I also want to integrate when it comes to my communication of all of that. And so one of the things we put together, and I know you guys were talking through, was being able to demonstrate that using this integration, using Torq, and being able to automate these processes. And we're gonna do a quick demo on that. But Ryan, you want to speak to some of the things that we put forward here, and as I transition the screen share to you, Asaf, so you can actually show the demo of that.
Sure. So this is I think a very straightforward use case from Grip for offboarding a user. In this case, we're going to receive a trigger, for example, from HiBob. User has left the company. We'll go through and make sure the user is found within Grip to make sure that before we take any action, they're actually in Grip. Once we found that, we'll actually go and look from the information from HiBob, maybe who the manager is of this user. And if we can't find the manager, maybe we notify a Slack channel. We'll go through, if all of that, we find the user, we'll start the offboarding process. We'll send a message to either the manager or generic, maybe an HR Slack channel, and send that to Slack, and then we'll start the offboarding process and send a message when it's complete.
Okay, and so some of the things we wanted to show you folks today, Asaf, I know you had a UI that you wanted to bring up and show how some of these are pre-existing, so the workflows are there, and then we're going to get into one that we're going to build as well when it comes to justifications. But you want to take us through this real quick, Asaf?
Yeah. Before jumping into the implementation inside Torq, I wanted to actually show you what is Torq helping to leverage on Grip. So if you're looking on the dashboard of Grip, we are basically able to show you who are the users in your organization and what kind of applications they signed up to. It either can be I use a specific user that signed up with a username and password with the corporate email and password. It's either just he hit on sign in with Google and he just found himself logged into to a specific SaaS application. And we can take a look, for example, on John Smith. It's just a randomly created user that we created for this workshop that signed up for 8 different SaaS applications. We identified that he logged into AnyDo and Dropbox and HubSpot using his Google Workspace credentials, meaning he just pressed signed in with Google and he was able to log into the SaaS, but he also created users in Postman, in Figma, in GitHub, all very known applications. Some of them are pretty risky, and Grip can help you to kind of, when this user will leave the organization, you would not want this user to retain, that the access of this user to these applications will remain. So Grip can help you to leverage the offboarding process for these kind of applications. Everything that what Torq helps us with is leveraging these kind of offboarding processes in enterprise scale, taking all these kind of users who are automatically assigned to be offboarded in the HR systems, either in your Google Workspace or O365 or Hey Bob or whatever, and basically trigger automatically the offboarding process for them. So in this case, and I will hand it off to Ryan, we will show you the pre-built template that you can find in the Torq store for offboarding and connect it to your own environment, and basically run it without even and leveraging it in scale for all the users who are leaving the company automatically.
Take it away, Ryan.
All right. So here we go.
I gotta see.
Yeah. So let me make sure I get the right.
Because the thing is, it happens all the time, right? I mean, take a large organization. In terms of personnel churn, I read a stat somewhere that's between 15 and 20%. And that's just moving roles. That's not people leaving the organization. 15 to 20% of people change what they should be accessing every year. That doesn't even count. The 60% or so of new SaaS apps that come in every couple of years. There's like a 2-year churn cycle when it comes to SaaS apps. And about 60%, and you don't know which ones it's going to be, are going to change every couple of years. So you have people moving all around. You have apps coming in, going out. Again, you have this identity mesh, this identity fabric that has a lot of threads to it. And so being able to act upon it in this way, because again, people move roles daily. But go ahead. I'm sorry. I've got to see this magic when it comes to automating that.
Okay. Sure. So we'll start with our trigger we received from HiBob. We have an event log here that has all of our data in it. And this is, our simulated user, John Smith, and myself as I'm apparently this user's manager. So we'll actually get a Slack message from that. We'll go through kind of the workflow of finding the user in Grip. We'll go through, and if the user is found, look for the manager. If the manager is found, we'll send an initial message via Slack to them saying we're offboarding the user. Then we would start actually the offboard process with Grip. And once that starts, we'll get a workflow ID that gets created. And then we'll sit and wait for Grip to finish its process of offboarding the user from the applications that they have assigned. And one thing that to keep in mind as well, these are things that are not tied to, like in this case, I believe this user, correct me if I'm wrong, Asaf, this is a Google Workspace user, so we don't need to worry about where they're connected to the workspace. It's just where they've created passwords elsewhere, correct?
Yeah, definitely. Once a user is leaving the company, probably his access to their identity platform, either Google Workspace or O365, it will revoke from him. So every application that is signed using this identity will automatically be revoked. What will still remain and the user will be able to access to, all the applications is signed up using the corporate email, but his own password. The user can leave the company, but still retain the access to the specific application that he remembers the password to. these kind of applications, this is the problem we are trying to solve. These are all from the access for all these specific applications will be revoked using this workflow. So you will get, by removing the access from for these applications, the user will be totally offboarded.
Yeah.
Cool. And then once the process finishes of offboarding, we give the option in this template to actually remove the license from Office 365 as well. So you can actually automatically do that. And maybe if you wanted to with Google Workspace, you could do maybe a suspend or unsuspend the user as well. So if, as part of the ending part of that, you want to reset them or reset any other factors they may have, you can do that as well directly from Torq to do that. At the very end, we'll look for any unsuccessful applications that were not offboarded, and then we'll send the final message to the manager or the channel, whichever one, including if there's any failed applications, and then we'll gracefully exit. So let's go ahead and run the workflow here, and we're going to run this from this event that we received again this morning for John Smith, and let's go ahead and execute it.
And while that's running, you can see the check marks coming up relatively quickly. It doesn't take all that long, folks. And when it comes to the setup, Ryan, I understand that you measured how long it took you to set this up in minutes, not hours. You didn't measure it in days. I mean, what are we talking about in terms of the setup here to have this sort of flow?
So if there's a couple things. One, if you pull it from the template library, so this is a version of this workflow that's in the template library.
It's already there. It's already there.
It's already here. It's already here. We pull it in.
There, folks. It's already there. He's already.
So this one's still running, but this is let's say a new version of this same workflow. Okay. And basically, the way most of our templates are built is we make our settings here. So we have a name of our grip integration that we're using in the template. For grip, we'll have one for Microsoft 365, we'll have one for Slack, and which channel we want to notify if we can't find the manager, and then whether we want to revoke the Office 365 license or not. And that's it. We change these 4 things, you bring it in, and execute it. And again, if you want to make any changes to it, feel free. And we kind of expect that because, we build these as kind of a generic use case that are for you to use. And you can also, something simple is you can actually cut and paste parts of this as well. So I can actually copy whole blocks of logic out and paste them into other workflows. So if you see something you like, feel free to copy and paste to your heart's content.
Fantastic.
So the workflow here is, so the workflow is still continuing and still running. Now, one of the things I would say, Josh, that you, I think, kind of asked is, how long does it take maybe to build something like this from scratch?
Right.
The more, what I find with our customers, excuse me, once customers kind of get used to the interface and how things are built, it's very, very quick. It is a simple process. You saw the steps to the left. You drag and drop steps, and you move data between the different steps to do what's needed in the different things. In this particular workflow, we're using Slack, and actually I didn't bring that up. We should see a notification here.
There it is.
That John Smith. Yep. So John Smith is being offboarded, and we'll have an update once it's completed, and that's what the workflow's completing here. And whether it's Teams, Slack, we've just recently added Discord, and we also have Zoom. So if you have any of those collaboration tools, all of these things are in play and can be used to build the workflow and do collaboration. We can also do, in this case, we were receiving a trigger from HiBob. So if I go back up here, we can, it says executing, but this was our HiBob trigger.
Right.
You can also trigger these from a web form. It could have been triggered from Slack. So maybe your HR department triggers grip from Slack. That's a possibility, or Microsoft Teams. So the flexibility is, up to the customer on how they would want to execute the workflow with the users.
Yeah. One of our customers had a really good way of putting it, and I believe they're using some of these workflows and so forth. And one of the things he said was they can affect more than they can touch. And a lot of the time, these apps and these different solutions and so forth are outside of their scope of concern. It's out of reach when it comes to IT and security teams managing a lot of these unsanctioned, unmanaged kind of SaaS apps. And sometimes, a SaaS can be something as basic as an online store where someone uses that identity in that context and so forth. And so it gives them that ability to see and discover and act upon more than they can touch. And it looks like we're able to demonstrate a lot of that here when it comes to this particular workflow. You just get an alert here, communication runs there, acceptance here and there, and pretty quickly we can have a meandering path and every customer can customize all of this, but you get that result that you're looking for, which is eliminating that access that could be dangling out there for someone that should be revoked, someone that should be offboarded.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I like that diversity of the path and where it can flow and so forth. And I know the other workflow and use case we wanted to cover today was actually getting into the guts and building some things when it comes to justification. So can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that process works?
Sure. So one of the use cases we kind of come up with was the justification, or even in our case, the workflow we're going to build is around reminders of justifications, and not only the reminders of just any justification, but reminders of justifications that have risky applications, because we may not care that somebody has access to Dropbox that may be sanctioned in the company. But in our case, we're going to build a justification workflow that is actually looking for anything where a user hasn't responded. So in Grip, we can send a justification. And what if the user doesn't respond? We can give them the ability, we can nag them now via Slack or Teams. We can go ask them to, hey, here's the link, go click on this and say whether you need it or not, especially if it's a risky app. I think Asaf set us up with a great one that has like a risk of like 91 in Grip. So it gives us that capability of reaching out to the end user and asking about it. And not only that, the workflow itself, if you start thinking of all the other things that you can do, we can start tying them into things like a Jira or a ServiceNow to start tracking things as well. So if there's some other process that a user or a help desk or a SOC team is doing around those types of alerts, we can help you build, update, change, modify any of those things within our workflows. Because for us, it's basically just like you see here, it's a step that executes on the system and runs some process.
And I know one of the things we wanted to do today was to take people through the building blocks of, and using justification potentially as a foil or as an example to go through and show exactly how the parts are built when it comes to this type of integration between Torq and between Grip in the circumstance of needing to run justification for a risky SaaS app. And so who should I hand the controls to? Which one of you want to do the demo?
Well, what I wanted to just show is that workflow finished.
Oh, well, here we go. Let me switch it on back to you, Ryan. Let's see the goods.
Yeah, so the workflow here finished. So the offboarding is complete, and we had and again, Asaf did a great job setting up the demo that this is an anticipated fail on the GitHub. But as a manager, I would know that John Smith still has a GitHub credential, or still has it in Grip, that this was an unsuccessful application.
And basically what you are seeing here, and I can maybe share my screen to see how it looks like in the dashboard.
Mm-hmm.
So in the dashboard, we can see that there were 3 applications that the user signed up using his app credentials. There were Postman, Figma, and GitHub. And is access for Postman and Figma. We rotated his password for these applications, and he has no longer access for them. But for GitHub, as we can see, we weren't able to rotate the password, so we marked it as completed unsuccessfully, and the manager got an alert, hey, pay attention that for GitHub, the user may still have access to. What I know behind the scene is what I did before this workshop is I revoked the access, I deleted the account from GitHub from our repository of grip that I signed up to. So the user we weren't really able to rotate the password because the user doesn't exist anymore, but I wanted to show that it highlights the things that the user still might have access to, and we as the manager or the security guys need to handle and to make sure that his access will be revoked, or either we don't care. In the case of GitHub, I doubt that nobody doesn't care, but that's the result here. And of course, once it's automated behind the scenes, it can be done automatically. You get these alerts to your Slack or whatever platform you will choose, and basically that's the results of the first workflow.
There it is. And now sometimes, like you mentioned, sometimes these things are supposed to be there, but we want to do some inspection and find out whether or not that should be the case. And we do these justifications and so on. And so Ryan, and this is the one, folks, where we're going to pivot a little bit and show you how the blocks are made when it comes to on the offboard. And we showed you that workflow built out. We ran it. You got to see the results. This is all real. This is all real time. This all just now happened right in front of your eyes. There's no voodoo magic or anything like that. But now we're going to show you how the sausage is made, or how the marinara is stirred when it comes to how these things go about. And so Ryan, I'm going to push control over to you to show how we construct these things when it comes to justification.
All right, so let me find the my right Chrome application here.
So one of the things that we wanted to be able to get into are some of these justifications and so forth as well, getting into some of those key use cases. And justification is an interesting process, right, Asaf? So if you wouldn't mind bringing up, just to give folks a quick understanding of what that is, because we're going to be leveraging those justifications heavily in the next Torq exercise. So Asaf, take it away. Give us a quick overview of what justification is and how we'll see it show up when Ryan demos it.
Yeah. So when we're looking on John Smith and his applications, I can see it kind of pops that he's using Postman with app credentials, and me as a security guy would want to ask him what does he need? What does it need it for? Is he keeping client's secrets inside in it, some API keys? So what I would want to do is basically ask him, do you still need this? Do you still need access? What are you using it for? And help me understand what are you doing with it, so I will know how to manage the risk around it. So what I can do is basically ask him, or as Josh said, trigger a justification workflow for him. So inside the system, under justification, I can basically ask here, John Smith, Postman. That's what I'm looking for. Who do I care who's using it? So I can see the business owner, I can see who is using it inside the organization, and John Smith is one of them. So I can basically trigger a justification for him. And what will happen that is the user is going to get an email asking him to fill. I will press run, and the user is going to basically get an email asking him to explain and to give more data for us. What security guys don't like to do is to kind of go after their people to fill these kind of forms. And here we can leverage Torq to help us to ping the users and telling them, hey, can you please fill this form? Hey, can you please fill this form in an automatic way until they actually do that. So I'll hand Ryan to actually show you how we can build this kind of workflow from scratch to help you as a security person to look for these results.
So Ryan's going to take us through exactly how those building blocks are constructed inside of Torq. And so take it away, Ryan.
All right. So let's go ahead and we're going to build a workflow real time. I'm going to start with our on-demand trigger. This could come from Slack. In our case, I'm going to just do a simple, it could be a web form, but we're going to take a trigger of an email. So whenever this workflow is run, we're going to take that email and pass it through to our other steps. So the first thing I'm going to do is in grip, I'm going to look for the user ID. So I need that user ID to do many things within grip. And you can see that Diana here is the pre-built example, but I'm going to go ahead and grab the event email. And now when I go to run this workflow, it's going to ask me, and I believe we have John Smith at, if I typed it all correctly, we'll go ahead and execute that. And you can see that went really quickly. We have our execution log where we have our UUID or our ID for that user ID. We also need to get all the SaaS applications for the user as well. So let's get SaaS applications for the user. And again, we grab that user ID for this reason. So we'll go grab the user ID and we can execute that. And we also need to get our justification workflows, and we can run these in parallel because they're not, these are just the justification workflows. We'll go grab them. So this will give us a list of all the workflows. So then we're going to need to filter out the workflows themselves from for the users, for that email that the user has. So I'll do we have a nice little utility here called filter array. So we'll take in all of the justification workflows, and we'll also do I will rename the step so we know what it's doing. So we'll do filter for users justifications. All right. And we're going to look for, again, going back to what we're keying off of, we're going to look for that event email from the user, and I'll complete this array here. And we want to look for something specific. And when I click the eyeglasses here, this tells me what data I have that's going to be input into this step. And I can see the email here is recipient email. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. And that is the key that I want to grab for this user. So anywhere that John Smith email is, we'll see we have a length of 2 different justifications that were sent to this user that they have not completed at this point. So now what we can do is start doing some simple logic. Let me grab an if here. And we'll, if justification is found, go ahead and again, filter, and we have a length here, and we'll just say it's great if it's greater than 0. We could also choose if it's not empty. And what's really nice with these logic operators is we can run it and we can see that it's going to equate to true. So we know we have justifications. Let's go ahead and loop over those. So we'll go and loop over justifications. And we're going to pick that filter for justifications array that we had. A nice clean array of 2 items or 2 justifications. Right. And next we're going to filter for the applications. So we need the applications because that's where the risk score is. So if I was to look at the data coming back from the justifications themselves, I have the name of the app, but I don't have the risk score. So I need to look at that risk score to be able to see if it's something that's low enough that I need to, because the lower the number, correct me if I'm right, Asaf, that the lower the number is what we want to have, right? That's the more risky stuff is the low number, not the high number.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
So we'll go ahead and we will filter on, we'll go against our SaaS applications that the user has. And I think there's 8 applications I think this user had. And again, we're going to look for in our loop, because I'm pulling in the justifications, I have the app name. So what I can do is I can actually filter on my loop on that SaaS name. So in this case, I'll start with Postman, and I will, because that's the item in the loop, the first one is Postman. And then I also need to know where that name is. So I can see if I look at SaaS and then I look at name, I need to have that key here of SaaS and name. So now when I run this, it should filter for this application, and I should be able to see my risk score is 20, which is pretty low. So I need to now do another piece of logic here where I'm going to see if the risk score is less than, let's just say 40, and in progress. Because I won't care if there's a justification that's already been completed. So we'll grab the loop value, and we should have a status, and that's in progress. I'll just verify that in progress, and then we will add our risk score. And this is in our filter app. So we only are filtering for the one app, so I can go ahead and get that one piece of data and our risk score, and we'll say less than 40. Now, if I run this, it should go down that true side. And I only want to, again, I'm only going to notify a user on if it's a risky application. Then we'll do the get justification link. And again, our workflow ID. I believe I have that in the loop value. Workflow ID. I can run that. And you can see as well as I'm editing and running the steps, so I know what's coming and what the data I'm going to have. And then the last thing I want to do is send a Slack message. And I could do Teams, I could do any of these, but I'm going to go ahead and send a message to Slack. I'm going to go ahead and send it to the user event email. And I have some text here. I'm going to go ahead and just copy to make this quicker. And we will do, this is in the loop, I believe, of our SaaS name. Yep, so that should complete. So we have our SaaS name, which is Postman. We have our link, and we have our user, and then I will select my integration with Slack. So now if I send this, I should get a Slack message to the user. We can see the red thing up here, and we see the notification we got. And we also have a link to Grip that takes me to this area. So we can see keep using or stop using. So that was very quick, but let me run it from the top so we can kind of see what this actually looks like. So I'm done at this point. The workflow's complete. You know, that I don't know if you had a stopwatch, but you know, I've done this before, making workflow or building workflows. So, but let's run it. Let's see what we get. And we execute it.
This is where we get to see the check marks all come up.
Yeah. It's going to run. And again, we could trigger this we could have triggered this from Slack. It could have been from a webhook. It could have been from Teams. It could have been a web form. And I'll show the web form just as the last piece of our workshop here. And again, we have our, you know, same thing we got before.
Ryan, if you'll press on the link,
yep.
And if the user will decide, if John that just received this message will press on keep using, press on it, then you'll be able to basically adjust what questions you are interested to hear from him. What is the data that you, as the guy who triggered the justification, are interested to basically know about the usage of John in the application.
Okay.
Bingo.
And then the last thing I will just show really quickly, once I publish this workflow, and this means it's in the system, it can be executed. If I was to go in and copy this web form, I could put this into, it could be a ticket system, it could be any other system, and I can actually trigger this workflow from here as well.
No.
Yeah. So very easily, you can integrate this with about any other system you would want, and this would trigger that workflow in the same way.
It's a sorcery.
It is.
That's it.
It is.
Bit magic. Yeah, that's sorcery. That's incredible, right? And
yep. So again, and it's running, and you'll see it run, to the end. But it'll do the exact same thing. Send me a Slack message because the data is the same that we ran earlier. But yeah, that's how we build workflows within Torq and how we help our customers build outcomes and automations in minutes. Like you said, this is probably less than 10 minutes to build this workflow as needed. So
yeah, right there. In this quick little exercise in a workshop, we went and showed all the offboarding cases that people have to go through, and did that with a quick pivot on an already built template. And then right there in front of your eyes, folks, again, no editing, it's sorcery when it comes to this, when it comes to how easy it is to build it up.
Yeah, your imagination's your only limit. Like if you can think it up, you can build it. For
Very
the most
well
part.
said. Very well said. Yeah, if you can draw a diagram, you can create these kinds of workflows and build out these systems with a lot of ingenuity as well as a lot of scale, like you were saying earlier, Asaf. And with that, folks, that really does conclude our workshop. As you know, that we try to be kind of nitty gritty, get into the weeds with actual functions of how these systems work. Today, we talked about how Grip takes insights and Torq takes workflows and puts it all into a hyper automation to ensure that identities are secure anywhere they use SaaS. And we just demonstrated a couple of use cases where you're offboarding or justifying the use of SaaS. And we're grateful that you all joined us. And Ryan, thank you again for being our special guest and showing us just what you can do with Torq workflows.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.